Hello and welcome to your Tuesday episode of Contested. We're going to be starting things off discussing some of the Overwatch League All Star results, as well as revisiting the Olympic Stadium as our interns are currently in Korea.
In addition, we do have some patch notes to go over, along with taking another deep dive into another one of the APAC teams. Today's team is going to be the Shanghai Dragons.
Live from Dallas, Texas, here in the Frontier Communication, I'm Jayne, this is Avast, and welcome to Contested. Welcome back. Tuesday episode. Rocket League continues to kick us in the nuts, so we are live a little bit early today. But if you are interested in Rocket League, you're luck, because not only is it going to be live a little bit later this afternoon, but also going to be live Thursday and throughout the weekend.
They like taking our lunch money.
They really do.
I have not been able to get myself a PBJ and milk in a long time. That's like the default cafeteria lunch when you didn't have... I don't know how it works in Canada exactly. I'm sure you have like a functioning system for school children, but for here, like you just like you show up and it's like you're gonna get a piece of cardboard, you have no money, and you're gonna get like a peanut butter and some jelly on it, and then you're gonna drink milk, and that's gonna be your default lunch if you do not have your lunch money. So I don't know how it works in Canada. I know what they gave you, like some poutine on some.
Yes.
It with bagged milk.
Bagged milk? No, only on the East Coast. Bagged milk's only on the East Coast. You can't.
Note has told me this like so many times, and I always forget it.
The bagged milk thing?
About where bagged milk is and isn't.
Yeah, it's only on the East Coast. Like us Westerners, we like to pretend we're normal at the very least, but no, it's yes, bagged milk is actually a real thing.
We're still an East versus West rivalry, even in Canada, huh?
I mean, yeah,
not
it's
just
a big
esports.
place. It's a big place.
It's a big, I guess so.
Well, don't even get me started on Quebec.
There's our Quebec. Ugh. Well, there's our Canada talk for the day. Always have to maybe we'll add that as a section as we move forward.
That's a good question, though. I'm not allowed to swear in English, but I can swear in French on this show. That's a good question.
You are not. I'm not the person. I'm not in charge of that.
Producer, am I allowed to just go on a French tirade? No. All right, perfect. He's just shaking his head at me. Damn.
Sometimes not.
I was really hoping.
I guess we should start with the first thing on the list, which is All Stars started happening today. And we have two events, obviously. There was APAC All Stars, which has already been completed, and NA All Stars, which is going to be this weekend coming up. And there was a lot of fun things that were done.
Some fun things and some controversial things.
Some very controversial things. As well, because they announced the list for both regions, and they sort of competed everywhere. You can see that we've actually got some nice little B-roll in front of you here, as they say in the biz. And I think the APAC one was super fun. They did some really crazy, just wacky things. Though I will say one robbery here. One robbery was the fact that somehow Smurf evaded this list.
Yeah, that is kind of...
Smurf has not been nominated for any awards at all throughout the year, and not even getting into All-Stars, which is crazy. That's like wow. Like, that's nuts. I can't believe Smurf has just actually dodged.
He didn't get a lot of playtime in the first half of the year, though, right?
Beginning of the year was Ryan Zarya, I believe. So technically was it Ryan Zarya in the beginning of the year?
Yeah,
yes.
I don't think Smurf was playing a lot at the very start.
Yeah, so Ryan Zarya is in the beginning. So yeah, in the beginning, Smurf wasn't full playtime. But then, the rest of the year it's been Smurf. So...
Yeah, but we also got to see some pretty interesting modes, including Tiny Overwatch, in which Ameng was a little pebble. And
that was a fun one. I like that one. It reminded me of like Prop Hunt.
Yeah.
It was fun.
There's a lot of fun modes when they introduced that hero scaling one, like I was playing Kill to Grow, the one where you kind of like start off as a little super tiny dude and you run around. You have to eventually kill other people in order to grow into just massive versions of yourself. Mm-hmm. That mode is actually ridiculously addicting. So seeing the pros playing Tiny Overwatch as well, that was good fun. And then Ameng, Stall, and Lee Zhang, I think that's already
I love when All-Stars, because I don't think All-Stars should be a super serious thing. Because the thing is, with all extraneous like competition that isn't part of the actual league itself, and we've learned this lesson many times with preseason, that was not like league mandated preseason. As someone that was part of the community countdown, you did that too. It was like last year, and all the teams were like, no, I don't think I will try. And it just was an awful experience for everyone involved. Really, it should be silly, I think.
It should be silly.
And have like some elements of seriousness, but overall just be fun. And I think stuff like that is like great.
I think with these events, you always kind of have to balance the incentives and motivations with the pro players. It's very much, this problem doesn't just exist with All-Stars. It also exists with World Cup, when you have kind of the Tier 2 and Tier 3 players who are going to World Cup, super try hard because it's their chance to shine. And we've seen it many, many times that a good World Cup performance can lead immediately to an Overwatch League pickup where you have all of the people who are already Overwatch League pros It's their off season.
Also, BlizzCon,
they don't really want to care.
Didn't they say they did some news about BlizzCon?
Yeah, it's
2021.
It's online
right?
February 2021, and we assume there's no World Cup.
Yeah, so probably no World Cup.
Probably no
right?
World Cup
Probably
this
no World
year,
Cup.
but I was just saying the similarities to previous years. Building out an event that's actually really quite fun to watch, as well as fun for the players to participate in, and the players actually care about. Pretty difficult because if you don't build a mode correctly, whether it's the rules or anything like that, then you kind of get what happened with the Widowmaker showdown in terms of the APAC All Stars.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yes, I'm going there, and I'm doing that handoff right in time for you to talk about it.
Well, before we get to the actual controversy of it, Toby was at Toby_un.
Yep.
Uno? I don't know.
One of those.
But the point is, they're complaining, chat, because once again, that's sort of the fine tuning, right? Between like what you want a fun event to be, because the Widow 1v1 was first to 9, and it was really long, and so the Widows just like wouldn't peek each other a lot of times, and then what led into that was that it caught On's. He said some things after the Widow tournament. He's like, oh, I don't care. And then he said some more controversial things regarding the certain language that could be. I don't know. It seems like it is bad, like vaguely even homophobic, which is not a good look.
And the original comments were in Korean, and neither Avast nor I speak Korean.
But it was translated by someone that's pretty reliable.
It got wow.
It's like. I never say their name right. I'm just like, it's gotta. I always say gotta.
Got him?
I don't even. I never read.
I always
the full
think
name.
gotcha, but that's not it. Either.
It's not gotcha either.
It's not gotcha either. It's Gamchun, Gatamchun. That one. Steakman knows who it is. They spelled it out.
There we go.
We're still not gonna be able to pronounce it, but
very reliable translator. There,
very
generally.
reliable translator. Been active in the scene pretty much since. Who was T. Robbins? He went to the military. He used to be the guy who gave us all the insight into the Korean scene.
Oh,
right? It was like T. Robbins 117 or 113.
Oh yeah. I thought aren't they still around a little bit? I honestly can't remember, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but regardless, so apparently, Ans basically either gave up or got bored halfway through this first to 9 1v1 Widowmaker game, and then during his apology for not trying or throwing or whatever it is, he basically made a comment that translated to English more or less sounds like the opponent were playing like gays.
Yes.
Which is...
a little too gamer. We had a heated gamer moment. Not quite fully heated. I would say at a mid-simmer on the gamer pot.
Mid-simmer.
A mid-simmer, but getting close to the heated gamer moment.
So that obviously went about as well as one would expect, making comments like that. It's
not a good look.
So
the Shock team, despite everyone loving them, and I think on average
they've had quite a few kind of like PR controversies this year.
So, controversy. What am I, Sean Connery? I don't know. What is it? A few controversies, I'd say, with their squad mates.
Yeah.
So hopefully everyone can learn from their mistakes here.
And it is kind of amazing how many Shock fans are actually defending these actions. It happened a lot with Violet as well.
Because the thing is, I think it started with PvP. Because if we're being honest, no one liked PvP as like a streamer. Because people didn't like how he played in ranked.
Yeah.
And so a lot of players would be like, well, I don't like PvP, so Violet's right. But it's like, no, not quite.
That doesn't work that way.
Not quite. Like, you may not like PvP, but also
being an Overwatch League pro doesn't give you just carte
a right
blanche
to be a bad person. So it just it happens that way. So hopefully Shock fans can, but I don't hold any hope for the public, honestly. I don't.
You don't?
After living in America for this year, I have realized that I have no hope for anything at all.
Life is pain, existence is suffering.
I have one hope, and that is that I can complete more SpongeBob games in less than double the allotted time that most children would do.
Than 17.5 hours.
So, yeah.
That's just about as long as
almost
to
double
9 1v1 Widowmaker match.
Yeah, almost as long. So hopefully everyone learns from the controversies there. There's always the delicate line to be towed too, because cultural differences and stuff like that. But we're getting way too, then it's just what do you want me to say, huh? I don't agree with it. There you go. I don't agree with it. Learn, be better. Let's get some education there. But there was All Stars. So NA's this weekend. NA will be really fun.
I didn't get to watch a lot of the APAC one, but yeah.
It's going to be fun. All Stars is a nice little... hopefully they'll announce Rookie of the Year and Coach of the Year. Still waiting on those. Mm-hmm. But I am almost certain that Krusty will be given Coach of the Year again.
Shocker.
I'm almost certain. But I would actually... Really, I think there are some other interesting candidates out there.
Yeah, for sure. I would love the top four, really.
I would love well, not even just outside the top four. I would still love Packing 10.
Really?
Yeah, I still think Packing 10 would be a really good candidate. I would like KDG for Fusion. Obviously, he's top, but KDG is great because he's the second time he's because he did it with Seoul, where he was like the one to make the 12-man roster sort of work.
Yep.
So I like that. I think that's really cool. Obviously, Moon will probably be on the list.
For the Shanghai Dragons.
And Seoul coaches should not be on the list. Seoul coaches should not be on the list. I guess then that leads me into another piece of news, since we're doing current events, is that Justice re-signed their GM, who was their GM. He's technically been like assistant GM for a while, but now
he's solidified in the GM role now.
And Supreme as their head coach again, who's been their head coach for...
He was interim head coach.
Interim head coach, because before that it was...
John Galt.
That's right. So technically two of their mid-season like interim people that are now just staying on as full-time in these new positions. And it brings on an interesting topic of like, when we're speaking of coaches, when I specifically say I don't want Seoul coaches in the Coach of the Year conversation, Supreme and Pri are interesting cases because Justice were really bad for the majority of the season.
Yeah, and somebody in chat is saying put Supreme on the list for Coach of the Year.
No.
But no.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Sorry,
not.
no.
Supreme could be a good coach. In fact, I heard a lot of great things about Supreme coming into this season. That's why I was really excited about Justice. Because I'd heard really good things about like Supreme and Wiz and John Galt. John Galt, I will be honest, I had heard mixed, but like Wiz and Supreme had really high like reviews. And so I was like, okay, this is gonna be great. And then it just never really panned out to what my expectations were based off other people's reviews and like what I sort of saw where they were at before. So Supreme could be a really good coach. We'll have to see for next year, because it's tough to become head coach halfway through the year.
Very tough.
In a team that's like lost a bunch of players. You have to rebuild. It's not a meta that's really great for you.
Yeah. And no matter what your vision is for the team, of course, you're
Yeah.
dealing with the contracts that were based off of the vision from the previous year team.
And
which,
Supreme didn't build that
is
team.
also a very comparable thing that you could say with the Seoul Dynasty. We talked about this previously, but Seoul Dynasty, of course, had the A-team, B-team format, which is no longer the direction that they're moving, but they, of course, will still have to contend with the contracts that they had in place, as well as the roster organization when they were playing A-team, B-team. So
they've re-signed them both for 2 years as well. And so the thing I have to say is about that's interesting is we have seen in the past teams commit to longer contracts at the end of the season, and it has not paid dividends. It is what some would even say has hamstrung organizations.
Yeah.
So who knows if this is the case there, but it is probably, it just remains to be seen, because I would say, considering where they're at, like ending the season strong, there's hope there.
Yeah.
They weren't in control of the roster the entire year. Pri was assistant GM, so all these people were involved in the process of getting Justice to be where they're at, though. So it's not like they were not culpable for anything that happened, especially if you're an assistant GM or if you're an assistant coach, like one of the more senior assistant coaches. Because I think Wiz was sort of like, he wasn't, I don't know exactly if he was like junior necessarily, but there's generally like a tiers of assistant coaches. And like, there's like, sometimes you have one role coach that's like, maybe a little bit closer to the head coach or something like that. It's just how it works sometimes. Don't know if that was the case for Wiz. But remains to be seen. I have to say, anyone that says Supreme gets Coach of the Year, though, just no. Yeah. Just no. Let's just no. Just no. Just no.
Even if he had a hand in it, it's not nearly the hand that, like Decay had.
Or just not being able to play main tank. Just literally not playing main tank. No one could have seen that. What a brilliant coaching strategy when I just don't play my main tank. Brilliant. This is huge moves.
Nailed it. Coach of the Year moves right there.
So we'll have to see.
I was being sarcastic. Pose Laud.
Well, I got it from your face, so it's tough to tell.
We got Pose Laud. It's just.
Well, that was one piece of news.
Yeah, it was.
But there's also been a lot of early shuffle with organizations. Boston released 2 coaches.
I mean, a lot of coaching positions have opened up. There have been quite a few. So,
well, not 2 coaches. It was an analyst and a coach.
Staff. Just
Minnie and Spackle.
Yeah.
Minnie has been with the team 3 years. Minnie was on the team when I was on the Boston Uprising. He was my old head coach.
Wow.
He coached us on LG Evil towards the end of our tenure.
And then, unfortunately, and remember who we actually interviewed on this show, Wheats from the Vancouver Titans, who followed in over a second win, is gone. So that is kind of an interesting one, because it's the question of what is the Vancouver Titans going to be doing for next year? Because can you really blame the Vancouver Titans coach for
especially considering they had a better season than Boston still, when getting in halfway and building a piecemeal team, and also on top of that, one could even argue they had a comparable season to Justice. So, like, Who knows what would happen if they had a full offseason to like build a more complete roster and spend some more time working on the pieces they liked? I don't know. But it's clear the organization wasn't.
Yeah, and it is really hard to kind of predict what the Vancouver Titans are going to be doing as an organization because a lot of their moves have kind of been nonsensical within, I would say, about the last year. So, if I was going to be looking at this, I would say, well, they're probably going to be looking to actually do a full rebuild with kind of higher tier talent, maybe actually pick up tier 1 talent instead of this emergency tier 2 mishmash sort of thing. But they do have some good players that I think are serviceable at the Overwatch League,
and
especially players like Shockwave.
Who knows what they do with do they keep the rest of their staff? Because they still have other staff they got from Second Wind that are still with them. So it's an interesting move. It's still very early. And same thing for Boston is like, is Mineral staying as head coach after what would argue a pretty disappointing season again for him? But maybe they felt like they didn't have the supported staff. I don't know. Spackle spoken of pretty highly. Minnie was always like a very player-driven coach, Yeah. There's some coaches that are just they're not driven as much like necessarily as like being the leaders of like what you're doing in game, but rather making sure like your team morale, like cohesiveness, communications, things like that. So we'll have to see. I definitely think for Boston it was time for a change, staff level.
Yeah.
When you've had some people that have been on
you
for 3
say a
years,
change, but are they going to replace these individuals?
I would imagine they would.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You
No.
think they'll just run with a head coach and a GM next year?
I am absolutely sticking. I am convinced that Boston is just trying to try and run as lean a ship as possible while maintaining their position as
if Boston
of the
can
Overwatch
do
League.
that, then
I think they will have a one-man staff and just put their players
they
up
just
in
make Huck
cardboard
coach?
boxes on the street. Yeah,
They make Huck coach and GM.
No, I would place money that these individuals are not replaced. I think that Boston are just going to try and run as cheap and economical a ship as possible because they still have the same amount of equity in the Overwatch. Well, maybe
Titans, a big part of their move was also like supposedly scaling down heavily.
Yeah, but I've made this argument throughout the entire year. Every time this comes up, that I'm absolutely convinced at this point that Boston is playing this like a shrewd businessman rather than actual members of an Overwatch League team with goals to win video games. It's they have, as part of the Overwatch League, they have some shared equity as part of the league. And if the league is successful overall, they'll just be the smart ones because they had the lowest burn rate until the thing actually became profitable.
Well, actually, the news just came out too, so we didn't get a chance to get it in. But it just came out that by the Esports Observer that the Overwatch League and Call of Duty League are going to be waiving all league fees for the next year. Like they won't have to pay their franchise fees.
Really?
Because they can't. Because
I didn't see this.
Because they can't uphold the point of their contract because there can't be live events. Yeah, there can't be live events. So like they can't forcibly. So they're pretty much saying we will let you defer a year on franchise fees because we essentially can't hold up the agreements. We can't run live events right now because of COVID.
I have not read this article.
It literally just came out.
Solomon is saying deferred, not wait.
That's what I said. Deferred. Okay, deferred. Wait for a year. Deferred. Essentially,
Wait means they don't have to pay.
Okay, so I should say deferred. Deferred.
Our
They're
fact
paying
checker
it later.
is working overtime
deferred,
over here.
not waived. Deferred. I should say. So deferred to the next.
And we will have to see. No, I'm going to skip that one. I'm not going to say that one out loud because I'm not sure if it's public or not.
Okay, well, yeah, just wait. If you're worried, then don't say it. But yeah, that just came out, so it would be interesting, especially since the league itself is saying like we are having to defer all these other things because of the fact that our model's been disrupted so heavily. And CDL actually had a really good year.
They did.
But they're still deferring their payment. CDL had a great year in terms of like everything that viewership-wise, like how well, even going online. So it's really not so much a question of like, oh, the leagues are doing badly. In this particular case, I would say if both of them are, it's more of just we can't uphold their model because we can't run live events. And the whole point of being in the Activision Blizzard ecosystem is running these live event systems based off geographic locations. So that's going to be interesting to keep track of, though. And
I think that the Call of Duty League right now, I think that by all metrics, the Call of Duty League is more successful than the Overwatch League right now.
I mean, I would say it was the first year, right? Yeah. So if you take first year Overwatch League and compare it to third year Overwatch League, huge difference already.
Yeah, but I think that right now, the Call of Duty League right now is getting better viewership than even we got in Overwatch League
year one,
Season 1.
I think there were definitely, the peaks were at points equal, but overall, probably, yes, CDL was probably more successful.
So, and I think
or at least in
being
NA,
the same ecosystem, being the same owners, I do think that, if Overwatch League was its in a vacuum, I think that I'd be more worried for it than them finding more success with the Call of Duty side of things. So I think that the Call of Duty league being so successful actually does bode well for the Overwatch League as a model and as an ecosystem.
So that's just an interesting piece of news. So we'll have to see what the staff goes. Well, we'll keep an eye on like the league, news and stuff. That was just literally that story just came out, so we didn't even have a chance to get it in. So, but I just thought when I was coming into work and I was like, wow, what's this? This is quite interesting. I sucked it up. I slurped on the juice. So it's going to be fun to look at that. But lots of staff movements happening. Boston for sure, though. If we're just going to go back to the actual staff stuff, Boston must, if they're actually going to, you only have two options now, right?
Yeah.
Like, you do the your option, where Huck becomes head coach, GM, and janitor.
Just does everything.
Just does literally every role, and they just have no more staff.
And they just basically put the team into stasis, do
Yes.
the absolute minimum they can, so
They give
that
them
they aren't in
nutrient
breach
base,
of contracts,
so they don't have to
and
feed them real food.
compete. Because I know that other leagues, members of the league have to perform at a certain level, and there's like threats of relegation, but no such thing, as far as I'm aware, exists for the Overwatch League.
There are, but there's also generally an expectation to win some games.
Yeah, but that expectation isn't legally binding.
It is not legally binding, but generally people that spend lots of money like to win some things. Generally, right?
People also like to just not lose a lot of money.
That's also true, but so you would expect one or the other.
Also, so the interesting thing that I was going to mention is public. So,
Go on.
there was a report that the Call of Duty League could play the 2021 season in bubbles, and this was published by Reuters on September 21st. And it said, basically, publisher Activision Blizzard asked owners to consider following the successful model of the NBA and NHL and sequester teams at a central location to prevent the spread of the coronavirus among players, according to the report.
Which could be possible for Overwatch League too.
Yeah, Las Vegas and Dallas reportedly have been mentioned as cities that could host the bubble. So what they're talking about here is that instead of having kind of the full homestand model, where just like in season 1 and 2, where all the games were hosted around LA, it could pick a few cities where everybody kind of plays those games.
Or just one city.
Or just one city.
Ideally, you would pick one city for like a most effective bubble, I would say.
Yeah.
But also for CDL, it's a lot easier because you're essentially almost entirely NA-based player base and coaching base. Like all of the organizations and staff for the most part are all NA-based, whether from Canada or US,
Yeah.
And while Overwatch, so like bubbling in NA, not a big deal. But for Overwatch League, considering that over half the league is from Korea and China and other countries, they're just like, especially non-NA based countries, they're just like, why would we be here?
Yeah.
Like they're just like, let us go away
from
from
a China bubble, an America bubble.
If anything, I would almost, I mean, if they're still going to split it by regions, then sure, have two different bubbles. But if you're going to pick, I would just pick one Asian city bubble and just put every team there.
Just ship all the North American teams to Asia?
It would be so much easier. It would be so much easier.
Huh.
It would also be probably less expensive than running two different bubbles.
Overwatch League Fight Island. This is a completely right turn. But do you think we're going to see expansion teams next year?
No, they already stated they're not.
No?
I think they already said they weren't.
When do you think?
Right?
Maybe.
They stated that, I believe. No expansion. Well, actually, no, they stated that for this year because they were doing, they were supposed to do homestands. So my guess is no. My guess is 100% no. Like,
What about next year? Do you think we'll...
Maybe. I would put like a 50-50. It just depends on how well they achieve, like, if they do a bubble, what their system's going to be and what happens with the game itself and stuff. Because at this point, for me, when it comes down to Overwatch, like, honestly, it's just like the Overwatch 2 Doomsday Clock. It's like, what is Overwatch 2 going to do for the game? Like, what are they going to add? What's going to happen with it? What's the release? Like, what, are we going to hear anything? Are we just going to wait until the heat death of the universe and then Overwatch 2 is released and Bobby Kotick is going to zoom on out of this and go to another sphere of life? I don't know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's two teams in the Call of Duty League that are in Europe. It's still also Paris and London, right? We still have no kind of like...
Yes, but the ownership groups are for, London is C9.
So like Europe is still conspicuously absent from both of Activision Blizzard's franchise
I think Europe
leagues.
in general is very absent from a lot of franchise leagues because the system doesn't really appeal to them as much. The only one that really is in the same ballpark is like LEC.
Yeah.
But even LEC still has relegation and things, I believe, right?
I'm not familiar with
Pretty sure LEC does. LEC is like one of the few regions where it's possible to be relegated. I might be wrong though. My league knowledge might be off. But I know LEC is like one of the only franchise leagues that Europeans are actually like European organizations are really into because so much of the circuit is so open for everything esports wise over there. And like it traditionally like there's also less there's like just less random rich people all the time that are just like spending like tens of millions of dollars off things like because all the European like rich people are like they've been rich for like 1,200 years, and like they got rich off of like turnip farming, and when the Black Death wiped out half the
Danish tulip bubble.
Yeah, Danish tulip bubble. So we'll just have to see. But I guess no. My guess is we're 100%. I would be shocked if there was a new team announced. I would be shocked. And considering that they want to defer payments for franchise fees, I mean, maybe it actually could be a really ideal time because the team could be like, actually, I'm not going to pay anything if I get in right now. But like, still, like, I wouldn't. Like, I don't see any teams doing it. Not until next year. And even then, it's a 50-50. Just a 50-50 because it's all based off Overwatch 2, realistically. That's how I feel about the entire league right now. Just based off Overwatch 2.
Yeah, when are we going to see that?
Where is Overwatch 2? Find it.
Yeah.
Open the book.
Find it.
Where's Overwatch 2? Is it in the striped red shirt? I don't know.
At this point, I think we'll hear about it next at legitimately at BlizzCon. So
hopefully.
But we're almost at 500 days without Overwatch 2 information, I think, since it was originally announced. So it's been quite the drought there. Quite the drought.
It has. So maybe we'll be watered soon.
Mm-hmm.
Until
I
then,
have no idea how we're going to segue into this next segment. My brain has been racking
we had
on...
a patch.
we got a patch?
Yeah, we had a patch. Patch came out not too long ago. It was not out when we did the last episode of Contested. It had a lot of interesting updates, actually. I don't know if you've seen this patch, Jayne.
I
but
don't
it is
think
a
I
link
have.
to the
No.
run of show. It had some, bug fix. They removed. They fixed the bug, by the way. This is just I think
the
big.
McCree air roll?
They did remove that. That didn't make it alive. But also, they fixed the bug that caused the GG Easy filter that no longer worked properly.
Yeah, that was very
thought was
important. One,
funny.
very important one.
But they nerfed Dynamite. So Dynamite now with damage boost, I think it's like 239. It went from like 239 to like 180 something.
Breakpoints.
Breakpoints.
Not meta inertia. Breakpoints.
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 So Dynamite got nerfed a bit, which I think is actually great because Dynamite with damage boost, like Ashe, oh my god, she was just so strong. So I think that's a fair nerf. Baptiste, they actually reduced the ultimate cost of the window, so we'll get it really fast.
That's good.
So that's fair. I mean, trying to find ways to put Baptiste like a little bit more into the meta a bit. McCree, the air roll didn't go through. The flying, the cherry blossom McCree did not make its way in.
But the roll is a further distance. 20%.
It is a distance, yes.
Yeah.
He rolls very long roll.
Better for dodging things, I guess.
Sort of the show long
retreating
mire,
behind
but
cover.
the show long
So
roll.
better mobility, and then his flashbang stun duration is increased to 0.8
Yeah,
seconds.
so some buffs. I mean, so they're looking for signs and ways to make McCree like essentially be able to compete with Ashe and Widow. Like, because McCree's problem has always just been, even compared to Soldier, he's not very fast.
And his hitbox is also really beefy compared to the other hit scans.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you have a chili con queso diet as a cowboy. It's just getting all red meats and beans. You just get very large and you get very
meaty.
because you're
It's
a cowboy.
okay.
You're a field hand working, taking the bales of hay from one place to the next. But McCree, he's like, so he probably needs to slim down a bit, do some long distance running, get better mobility.
And then Orisa got more armor as well as increased projectile speed, which the very few times that I've played Orisa, I mean, the slow projectile speed, it's kind of like so.
Yeah, which people have been mixed about because anytime you give a buff to a tank that is not liked, everyone's like, no, I can't believe you would make this hero not trash. And it's like, well, maybe we should have some semblance of balance, or else just delete the character, because otherwise it's like, we can't just ignore Orisa forever. We just can't treat Orisa. We can't just be like, no.
We can, though.
We could.
We could.
If
we have
wanted
ignored other characters for longer.
We could make Overwatch Pro Mod, because since Overwatch 2 might never be released, we just, at this point, the community
just
takes
have a
over the
workshop code that is agreed upon to be played in the Overwatch League.
Just Pro Mod.
Just like Gentleman's Agreement Overwatch.
But also they increased her armor too, so she's a little bit, she's a little bit
tankier,
stronger, a little bit tankier. So because Orisa's sort of fallen out because of the shield nerfs, and people are like, well, I can play these other tanks and I can be much more survivable and I won't take as much damage. So I'm not sure if that's really going to push Orisa though in a direction, because the real thing with Orisa is that she's all based around that static of being like, okay, I have a shield, I have a halt. Being tankier, it's helpful, but it's really nice to have that shield to avoid damage and to play around the halt. So I don't really see that being a huge difference maker for her. And finally, Roadhog, they gave him another buff, because after they nerfed his damage, which people said took him from God tier to tier, now there's like, well, Chain Hook can pull you closer.
Breakpoints, though.
Yeah.
It's all about those breakpoints.
It is. It's all about breakpoints every time.
And when it's not about breakpoints, it's about meta inertia.
And when it's not about that, it is about flowchart Overwatch.
Yeah.
Those are the three things, the trifecta. Flowchart Overwatch, meta inertia, breakpoints. And notice that is a flowchart in itself.
Yeah. It's all very meta.
Meta all the way down. Meta all the way down. So something that's going to make it one-shots more consistent on some of the smaller targets, because you can bring them closer. You can do more damage to like baby divas or Anas and things like that. So we'll have to see if that actually pushes Roadhog anywhere now that not really been as meta. But Roadhog will still be meta for grand finals. So we still have that. Still have that going on. And I think we've covered really about all of our current events for the most part around it.
Yeah. So we are going to be able to, go to Korea live on location. We sent our
can't.
interns. We can't. We sent our
can't.
interns though
sent
in a
our
shipping container.
Dangerously.
Yes.
I think we poked maybe one oxygen hole for Av and Jack.
Breathing hole. There's a straw and they have to share it between the two.
They've
of them.
still been there because remember, the grand finals are still happening there in about 2 weeks from now. Well, less than 2 weeks from now. And so we really wanted them to get on location and just take a look at some of the set work, look at the footage.
Yeah. Last week we had them take a look at both the APAC and the North American training facilities
and their quarantine differences.
But yes, this week we were sending them to take a look at some of the Olympic events.
So we're setting up here for the 2020 Balance Overwatch League Grand Finals Balance Beam section. I am Av with the equally quiet and whispered and raspy Jath to my side.
Yes, hello everyone. It is I, Jath, here. Happy to be judging with Av here in, as you said, the Balance Beam section of this year's competition.
It's always a very coveted title here to see which teams win or lose based off their balance, aka their compositions.
Now, this is going to be the San Francisco Shock performing. Now, the Washington Justice have so far had some great results, and the San Francisco Shock, instead of trying to create a trick of their own, have decided to try and copy and outperform Washington Justice at their own trick.
A risky routine. I mean, it requires a very subtle song and dance here for the Shock on Kings Road. They've set up on the beam itself. They're ready to see. We're going to have to see, can their balance be in form?
Well, it looks like there's a little bit of imbalance here as Stitch is finding that opening and the San Francisco Shock starting to fall. This is looking quite dangerous.
And already they're tipping over the side. They've already lost a lot of space, and it looks like from Stitch in the back line, uncontested Shock, showing that they're really about as balanced as a Weeble Wobble.
Now, I am looking at the other judges here, and despite the Russian coach awarding a 10, I don't think that score is going to be able to beat the Washington Justice's performance on this same trick.
No, probably not. They are going to be falling over now, and they have failed the routine pretty significantly, I'd say.
Best luck in the next round.
And you see here, once again, Janu is here in the corner trying to reset because Shock, they've lost a lot of their footing, their equilibrium thrown off here on Kings Row 2nd.
They have realized that they can't simply copy the Washington Justice at this point and are going to be trying to improvise. It does look like they are going to have some aspect of the splits in this next upcoming performance.
I mean, but also the problem with the splits here is that sometimes you go a little too wide because now they just seem to be struggling here to get back to the point, to get the touch, and they don't.
And yes, you can see that the splits unfortunately worked against them, one on either side.
They've been split in either half.
And not in the center on the payload where it mattered.
Down the middle, ripped in half.
Now, while we're waiting for the next competitors on the balance beam, we'll be looking across the floor to the uneven bars where the Seoul Dynasty are just setting up for their routine.
And you see Fitz chalking up here, just ready to take the mount and start the routine, just poking around here on the outside of Hanamura versus the Dragons.
Now, there's the mount. Great precision, good entry, setting up for a solid routine. Going to just be stabilizing here as they're preparing for the transition onto the high bar.
And now you see the momentum is out. They are using that forward momentum from the swing. You see now they're going to the high bar here.
Great transition, good strength, setting themselves up well into the second half of this routine, and they might be looking at a very good score here overall.
And Dragons looking to return, though. They're not going to give up this routine just without a fight. They want the judges to look favorably here on the re-engage.
And now here is the absolute critical venture to decide which one of these routines are going to be more spectacular. A very difficult trick. The Primal, of course, a trick that has only been mastered by a few individuals in these events so far.
And definitely not mastered there. I mean, sort of mulched a little bit there, so probably getting a little bit over enthusiastic there with the movement.
And as we approach the demount, I think that is going to be the deal breaker, as all of the judges, not just the Russian judge, are going to be agreeing that the Seoul Dynasty have a perfect score in this routine.
Flashing tens all around, and that is definitely going to be the dismount there on the uneven bars, and a great routine from the Seoul Dynasty. And we're back here after a shaky floor routine for the Shanghai Dragons, looking to regain some composure, get some more points here in the second event, the balance beam.
Yes, earlier on in the set, the Shanghai Dragons were appearing to take it easy, but of course that performance on the uneven bars has really forced the Shanghai Dragons to try and execute on more of their difficult routines.
Beautiful recovery there. It was looking like they were a T-ring over the edge, but they found it. They brought actually the Dynasty over the edge instead. Absolutely beautiful recovery there from the Dragons.
This is so far looking like the Shanghai Dragons actually had a much better balance beam routine than anyone expected or any that we've seen from them before.
One could even say it was a fearless routine. We have some hearty chuckles here on the desk. We have some hearty chuckles here.
You with your side-splitting jokes, Av.
Well, that has been an excellent day of floor routines here and the Overwatch League 2020 Grand Finals. And we do have the top 3 scorers out in front of us right now.
Yeah, so far it looks like after the first week of performances, finishing off here, the Shanghai Dragons are definitely in the lead here heading into those final weekends coming up. The Seoul Dynasty in hot pursuit with the Philadelphia Fusion rounding out third, and of course the San Francisco Shock coming up last there in fourth place. They really did struggle with that recovery.
Yeah, Shock, they just did not seem to have the stamina required, the flexibility compared to the, what one could say, almost the Elastigirl-like flexibility of the Shanghai Dragons.
Now, unfortunately, that's all that we have for today, but we're going to be sending you back to Jayne and Avast on the desk where they will put you to sleep with their extremely boring commentary. But for more riveting action, look forward to next week where we'll cover the remainder of the events.
Wow, Av and Jath are just, they're really doing a lot out there. I wasn't expecting that. I don't even know how they would have gone into the place to even have mics to start commentating over.
They definitely have gone through a lot of different roles. They've been artists, they've been lawyers. So far, we haven't had them be doctors. Thank
Not
God,
yet. I
really want to keep them away from the hospitals.
I really want to do something with them with doctors. Okay, that sounds ominous when I say it like that, but that's not the. It's more of like they could be good at it. They could be good in the medical field.
No.
Yeah, they could.
I really prefer if we
they were naturals.
We can leave the body count to the actual video games.
They were naturals.
Keep them in the client. I don't really need to rack up a body count in a hospital. So,
well, that's art isn't made living like a coward.
That is not something that I would want to hear my doctor say. I'm just gonna put that one out there.
We have a very experimental doctor, somewhat. Okay, we could have a very experimental doctor.
Yeah.
But they were doing great work. I can't wait to see what next they do over there in Korea. John Spector remarked there, he's like, wow, they really got through the quarantine really fast.
Yeah,
I was like, John, they're well connected.
They're very well connected.
And more importantly, we don't have any standards, so we can just get them in whatever. So it's just like a little bit of both.
Yep. But Shanghai Dragons, you saw the medal results up there. Actual statistics, Pog. But
their floor routine is great.
Floor routine,
Great
good balance,
routine.
better at the splits than the San Francisco Shock.
100%. They've been putting in the hours, putting in the work. But that's the next team we really have to talk about here because we're doing a deep dive into all of the final 4 teams that are going to grand finals. And Shanghai is our second team. The second team that we want to take a look at here. And they have been sort of the undisputed, or as close to undisputed as you could get, while being close, sort of number 1 in the APAC region, which is looking to be the hardest region. They have just been a fantastic squad like all year round. And I have to say, if you're a Shanghai fan after like the year 1 for Shanghai, now to be in this year, in the third year, and be a contender to just win,
such a
favorite to win.
narrative, especially for Fearless, having gone through that entire thing and now coming out not just fantastic on the main tank, but looking absolutely killer on the Roadhog as well. He's been looking absolutely fantastic there. So yeah, big squad. And then as Jath and Av were mentioning in their Olympic skit there, good flexibility from this team and adaptability too. I think that's probably been one of the scariest things about this team is that, whether that's the coaching that they get at halftime or the players kind of just improvising or coming up with counter strats on the fly, they have been extremely, extremely good at adapting and counter-strating.
Which you would expect from a top, like one of the best team in the region, if not the best team in the entire league, is that the best, there are teams that can be the best with one meta in one particular time period, but to be the best over various metas is the sign of like a true hallmark of really, really good team. It's why teams like Shock are, everyone's like, wow, like this squad is kind of like still the undisputed, like one of the best for these past 2 years. Even if they end up not winning the Overwatch League this year, it is still like you can't really put anywhere else. Even if they hardcore beef in grand finals, honestly, I still would put them as like a solid second in the league if they lose to Dragons, simply because they've just been so incredibly good throughout the year and so flexible throughout metas, even if they've taken some time to adjust. And the same goes for Shanghai. They've adjusted over various metas throughout this year. They've looked really, really great. They have the MVP. They have Fleta. Not that really matters too much, honestly. The MVP hasn't necessarily mattered the most ever, but it shows that they have like a star candidate, several star candidates. I mean, any members of their team could have been like MVP. I mean, Fearless was in that title, I think. I think he was in the running for MVP. No, he wasn't.
I don't remember.
I can't remember everyone. Void was.
Yes.
I think. Void was, yeah. So they just have a lot of really, really good players on this squad. And Coach Moon, who was with Valiant before and left, is now working with this full Korean roster, is looking very good. They've had some ups and downs, but it's always been against really good squads. So I'm excited about Dragons. They are my pick to win, my favorite pick to win. And then my other one, if it's not Dragons, is going to be Dynasty, just because of the pop-off factor,
Yeah, and there's also the other factor, of course, that the North American teams are having to go through quarantine and they don't have their normal training facilities. They're scrimming on laptops or anything like that.
Huge disadvantages.
So, if it wasn't for that, I definitely think that Philly would, it's all Dynasty. If they didn't have the advantage, I think would be, much more closely contested between the Philadelphia Fusion and the San Francisco Shock, but it'll have been 3 weeks or something.
Without proper scrimming. Even if they are scrimming now, which I believe they're sort of trying to, it's just tough to do that.
Yep.
Astro, apparently someone told me that, I got a screenshot from it. Astro was like ranked 12th on Korean ladder.
Really?
While scrimming out of
That
like a
doesn't surprise
quarantine.
me. Funny Astro has always been like ranked one.
The man's
He's
crazy.
just a ranked warlord. It's insane.
That's nuts. Like I saw the screenshot, I was like, what? Like he's playing on like a cardboard box, like in a little room. He has like no mouse pad. And it was actually insane. The Switch version of Overwatch really paying dividends for Astro.
Yeah, playing the Nintendo Switch version.
The Korean government is still starving Shock.
Weird conspiracy theories coming out in chat.
Is the Korean government like, we'll make sure that the APAC region wins today? No food for you. I'm assuming there's just probably the Shock players are like complaining or something about the quarantine. I don't know. But it's Dragons, though, are going to be probably one of the best narratives overall in Overwatch League, simply because they went from being the worst sports team in the history of sports, any sport, ever.
Including meat sports.
Including sports that are played with your flesh and blood out on the pitch, or whatever you may be using.
The field, the yard.
The yard. It's Super? Well, that makes sense. Super just complains about everything. So that makes sense. The billionaire, huh? But
the billionaire.
Going from that to being a contender to win the league and be a favorite contender to win the league and being the number one in like what is considered the hardest region too, and being adaptable is an insane turnaround in the span of like 2 years. Because if you really think about it, there are dynasties. ZP made this tweet though. Granted, I know everyone gets tired of ZP making like sports comparison tweets, like football and stuff. But like there are sports franchises that have existed for like 100 years and they have been bad for like 50. So that's what's so wild about esports sometimes, that like the time frames we deal with, like it seems like you distill like essentially 10 years of like meat sports to like 1 year esport, and that's like the time frame we move in at points, it feels like. So Dragons are an incredible story to go. I mean, Justice have been terrible for 2 years. They've been terrible, really bad. Boston have been probably the worst team in the league.
They had one good stage in season 1.
Yeah. Well, technically, they had 2 okay stages in stage 1 and 2, also season 1, but it wasn't great. It was okay. But yeah, one great stage in stage 3. I was there for that. What can I say? I mean, what can I?
It was all
me.
It was all this man right
all
here.
Me, 100%.
Yep.
Sometimes you just set it up.
Sometimes you just hard carry.
Set it up. Playing. Just good work, me. Good work, me. But overall, really to talk about for Dragons, from my view, is like, I know you disagreed with Void specifically about like, okay, you never felt like Void was necessarily like the best off tank player in the league. Because you always felt when you watched him, you're like, oh, he's making some mistakes that some of the other ones don't. I still think Void is really, really good.
Yeah.
I think Void has had standout moments with both Gladiators and now with Dragons, and he's extremely flexible. And very importantly, compared to like players like Janu, who was a really good off tank for Titans and has now struggled with Justice, not just because his team was not very good, but also he doesn't have, not all of his heroes he can play like all off tanks at the same level. Like Janu, Hog, Diva, great.
Yes.
Put Janu on those. Sigma?
Yeah.
Zarya? Yeah. But Void, he can play all four of those tanks and
Yes.
be incredible at all of them. And that's really important when you have all-star rosters and rosters you want to win the league, is you want to have players that can play everything, ideally in your starting six. It's not that it's non-optimal to have players that you rotate in and out, but like just because of the fact that esports on average have so much less auxiliary staff and resources, I feel like being able to keep 6 players in at all times that just play everything.
Yeah, and that was
ideal.
going to be one of the things, because I was looking into the Shanghai Dragons a lot more in detail because of course, my previous comments on Void. And one of the things that I was going to mention is that his Sigma was looking really quite good. And then on top of that, when we were looking at the previous ones, I was trying to find reasons to argue against these teams. And really, the deeper that I looked into the Shanghai Dragons, trying to find flaws, trying to find cracks, the only thing that I kept finding was more and more strengths. And not just the flexibility and the adaptability of the team as a whole, but especially with the supports. I think they're kind of the unsung heroes here, especially when you have Li Gong and Izayaki.
You know that Li Gong has like one of the highest death per 10 minutes of a Lucio player.
Yes, I did know that. And he also dies the furthest away from his team of any
like
Lucio
all the
as well.
time.
Like
He's
all
just
the time.
He's paratrooping.
Yep.
Always on
But
Lucio.
he makes it work. And, he was one of the best Brig players when Brig was meta, and Brig gets nerfed to the ground. And now he's one of the best Lucio players. And then he had some absolutely nutty Mercy plays in terms of his macro understanding of the game, like positioning. He always just seems to be ahead of the curve no matter where the game is going. And then Izayaki as well. He's probably one of the members who gets spoken about the least, because of course you have Fearless, you have Lip, you have Fleta, but Izayaki as well.
Which is
more
also
than
another
just holding
interesting
his
player.
own. He's doing
great.
fantastic.
He is, and it's also really interesting because he kind of had a disappointing debut in terms of Overwatch League, because he came in for Valiant end of last year.
Yes.
And he was like clearly seen everyone, because like, oh wow, this guy is like really good mechanics. He was like, essentially when he debuted, he was Korean Dogman. It was like he hit shot real good, but he no press Q real good. And then like he died many times. And that's like how a lot of people felt about his play. At least that's how I felt when I watched him play. And then moving on to Shanghai is odd because a lot of the best teams you see often have some of the most aggressive like supports.
Yes.
And that's kind of just like a universal factor, because supports and tanks like are the pace. They set the pace for everything, really.
Yeah.
And having very aggressive backlines and very aggressive tanks like really put you in positions. But like Shanghai is at a whole different level of aggression often, especially with Li Gong. So I really feel like that's kind of like a very important factor to look out for teams, and why we can see Dragons be like, these are just not only super talented players, but they play just so aggressively. Their mindset is so aggressive on all levels of their play, which is really, really important. And I think it's a really great turn around for both Fearless and Izayaki both, though Fearless obviously a little bit worse.
Looking at I had forgotten about his problems with his ultimate usage during the GOAT meta, but
it was not great.
And I don't know whether he's just improved his game sense.
I think
or
just
whether
being like a
there's
full.
shot calling,
It's always
more
important to be in
coaching.
like a full Korean roster. I think for some players,
For sure.
for some players.
But I didn't see really any kind of problems with his decision making, and then his mechanics were obviously still at a absolutely stellar level. And the flexibility, they changed a lot between the Mercy Ana, the Mercy Zen, the Lucio Moira, like all of their support combos were just absolutely looking fantastic in the game against the Seoul Dynasty, where it went to 5. So and then Lip as well. It was Lip versus who is the other Sombra player for the Seoul Dynasty in that game? I'm blanking.
Well, Lip was Shanghai, and then the other for Dynasty, didn't they play a lot of Fitz Sombra?
Yes,
A lot of Fitz Sombra.
but Lip was kind of playing like super anti-Sombra, and he was just absolutely winning those mind games. The entire Sombra v Sombra matchup, Lip was absolutely incredibly dominant. I don't know, I haven't been as hot as on Lip previously as compared to Fleta, but at least in the
Really, you
playoff
weren't as
games-
hot on. You were more hot on Fleta than you were Lip. Really?
Yeah.
I was kind of inversed, honestly,
Okay,
at
that's
points.
interesting.
Fleta has always been like a mythical figure at large portions for his career.
Yes, for sure.
And especially when he entered Overwatch League, I was like, wow, he's had good moments, but I'm also been like he's never lived up to expectations for me. While Lip came in, I was like, who is this person? I do not know who Lip was. And I saw him out on the stage for it was like the next gen tournament or whatever it was. It was like before season started. He was like 8 feet tall. He played DPS. He was like quite possibly the tallest person in China. I was like, this is unreal. He's so tall. And I'd never heard of him, and he was so good at Sombra. And he was really good at Reaper too. And his Sombra play and really has really changed. I think has actually in some ways pushed forward like how Sombra is played, because we've seen portions of what he's done, but Lip is the first Sombra to really go for like a hard I'm not worried ever about ults is too much. He almost exclusively plays like I'm getting like massive utility value and massive poke damage Sombra, which we've seen before, but not to the level of coordination that Lip has done with Shanghai, where they're just so great at isolating players early and using hacks to just find people very early and just doing so much damage and not worried too much about EMPs. Like we've had plenty of like DPS players that played Sombra and it's like they shoot and they're not good at like EMPing, but they're generally also not too good at hacking. But Lip actually is just an assassin on Sombra, and not too worried about ult economy. Though obviously it's still important. So I think that's what's so interesting about Lip is that he's a rookie, but he's, in my view at least, pushed the Sombra game like very far forward in terms of like how we view it within the meta.
And there's so many different ways that you can play Sombra. I think that Lip's playstyle was a little bit more towards that kind of utility value. That, it really felt kind of somewhat similar to maybe a higher level ball player where you see him and he kind of is just like rolling around, not really getting kills, doing a lot, but he's providing.
Yeah, it was like when we watched
value.
Amon come up on the stage for the first time and play ball.
But that sort of play style to me, especially as he's moved more towards this, it seems like I would almost say predator rather than assassin. He really does hunt people down now.
Yeah.
But it was really up to people like Fleta and Fearless in order to actually capitalize on that. So I still felt like Fleta in terms of which two members of the DPS lineup,
arguably one of the most flexible players, if not the most flexible player,
and dominant on everything that he flexes too.
Yeah.
So
they're just a scary squad.
Yeah, very scary squad.
Scary squad all around, and that's
like,
also
what is the Shanghai Dragons' weakness really, other than the Chengdu Hunters, which no longer
I honestly can't find the biggest thing for them is that their best. What is likely their best Widow player, DM? Because remember, DM's on the bench. DM is on the bench of this team, and everyone was like, and DM at one point everyone was like, DM is like, on par to be like one of the best Widow players, if not, people wanted to put him in the conversation. Now that Ons has entered and we had some more players compared to, well, who knows, right? But like DM is still such a supremely talented hit scan, and he really hasn't been played too much. So you could argue that maybe in like a more pure hit scan meta, Shanghai could be in a rough spot potentially, where like Fleta's flexibility and Lip's very, very strength on Sombra and Reaper and things like that aren't as important. But I think they'd be fine still. I think they'd be fine. It's like how I feel about Shock, where Shock, like, they're pretty good on everything, but also I don't really like any of their Sombra play for the most part, which is very important right now. So that's how I feel like is like their one weakness is like in a double hit scan scenario. Or maybe in like a double projectile, but even then, like I think they'd probably be fine. So they're just really, really good. It's a really good Shanghai team. I mean, there's really nothing else to say about them. Just how
it's been. I mean, and they also really haven't been tested.
Oh, they have Ding. They have Ding. Of course, they don't have to worry about double projectiles. They have Ding. They have Ding and DM. I mean, well, they'll never have to worry about double projectile. Of course. How could we forget? How could I forget? Ding, the ultimate silly hero specialist is there. So they don't do it. Yeah, it's only double hit scan because like they would have to, and because they haven't played DM as much, so it's more of just like a comfortable reason for them.
But I mean, I've struggled to find reasons to vote against the Shanghai Dragons. I tried, rewatched a whole bunch of matches from first person perspectives on characters, but just kept being impressed by flexibility and individual plays. So I think they're absolutely monsters going into this. The only thing that could potentially catch them off guard is if they get caught off guard in terms of a meta read or something like that. But
maybe double shield, because they weren't amazing at double shield, but they were still so good at it that I think it'd be fine.
But even with the fewer number of teams actually scrimming right now, there's only two teams, and then who do they scrim against? They have to scrim against top level tier 2 teams or anything like that. It's like there's such a small pool of teams which are actually scrimming to assist these teams preparing for the grand final that I don't think we are going to have drastically different meta reads. It's there's not a large enough pool. There's not distinct geographic regions. I would expect that all of these teams go into the finals with a very firm decision on what they're going to play, and they should have been able to collect information on what their opponents are going to play for these grand finals as well. So even the off chance that Shanghai Dragons misses a meta read seems pretty low.
Pretty slim when you're the one that has all the time to prepare.
Yeah,
pretty much. It seems very unlikely. So it's going to be tough to beat the Shanghai Dragons. It's gonna be really, really tough to beat the Shanghai Dragons. Like they're just They're just looking so good. But if you're a Shanghai Dragons fan, you should be excited.
Yeah.
You should be really excited.
Well, then again, you could also be a little bit fearsome because, great expectations. Short of winning the entire grand finals, you're going to be disappointed.
That would be rough. That would be rough.
That would be pretty
Yeah.
heartbreaking, which means it's going to happen. So,
Which
sucks
means
to-
it's gonna happen.
yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, I mean,
Well,
you were playing Doomer early in the episode, so I just had to.
That's true. That's fair. We
Yeah.
have to have a double. We have to have
gotta
a
have double
balance of the
Doomer.
Doom.
Yep.
The Doom squared. Mm-hmm. The Doom squared. Well, that's a look at
Having
the Shanghai
expectations
Dragons.
for anything in life is a mistake.
And there's
Pro
re-
tip from contested.
Have no dreams, children. I think overall, though, that's really all we need to say about Dragons because it's just every part of them is so good and they have such key, distinct characteristics that are important to making a championship team that like we don't have to spend deep dives like this is what they're gonna be bad or this is good. Like, yeah, they might be slightly worse in some metas, but I think overall they're gonna be good to go. They're gonna be fine. Like they're the clear number one favorite. But I guess that leaves Mailbag.
Yeah.
We got two. We have to
We
read
got a
Mailbag
really
from last
good
week.
question to start things off.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Mailbag. Also, Albert was in the chat earlier and he said, "Good thing Florida's never been bad."
They have never been bad.
They
have never been bad.
I see Albert.
Albert, you know my
Collective
PayPal.
amnesia, perhaps. You know my PayPal, he says. Well, the mailbag questions from last week we asked from the 22nd of September. Do you remember? That's not the song. That's not the date. But
Do you remember?
question one was, and also it was spelled in my Discord, Question. Question one.
What?
Solomon put that in there. Question one. Is Avast dumb?
Very important question.
Well, do you have some responses you'd like to read?
We had one from Homebound 11. He said, how could you, Jayne? Avast is by far the wrinkliest brain in the entire Overwatch community. His amazing takes, his dedication to the knowledge growth through various streams and special events like the Spelling Bee are simply superb.
Of course.
To think so low of your co-host is
Yeah.
just plain mean.
Agreed.
Avast, the Bitcoin payment didn't go through. Please review your wallet settings and resend your confirmation.
You weren't supposed to put that on there. You weren't supposed to put that one on there. That wasn't part of the deal. So you will not be getting. You will be getting nothing now. You'll be getting nothing. So I don't like that one. I don't like that one bit actually.
Did you manage to pay anyone else to defend you?
So Karener from my Discord says that Avast IQ breaks through the IQ floor and loops back to the ceiling. And by the way, ceiling was misspelled along with question. So,
All right.
think about that. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I love that. I'm a big fan. And then I have another one from Helino, which is Avast is quite smart. He sees that Toby is a good solid main sport that's very flexible and how Fitz kind of slaps kids. Exactly.
Slaps kids.
Not kids in the literal sense, kids in the video game sense.
After the week or two we've had in the Overwatch community, we probably do have to specify that one.
Yes, they're not slapping children. Toby does not slap children, as far as I'm aware.
What was our second question? I didn't have any questions.
Question 2. Well, Solomon put this as Quest 2.
Quest 2.
Parentheses, less important. How much does Chin leaving Chengdu matter? Now, Chin has also had, Chin, we were debating, it's like, what do we do with Chin's face? So it's like, probably don't put Chin's face anywhere now, because Chin also had some controversy come out.
Yes.
About himself. He was
About himself. Yes, that's about as detailed as we feel
Kinda
like
toxic.
getting into.
A little
That's
toxic
one way
from
of
Shin.
putting it.
But realistically, if we're looking past, so this is one of these moments where we sort of have to separate the art from the artist.
The art from the artist.
We sort of have to separate these two a little bit, just for the sake of this question, not for the sake of should Shin come back to Chengdu. Unequivocally, no. Obviously, if this behavior is good, and also for people who aren't aware, Chin was essentially just
I
very
cannot
toxic
wait
on
for this
forums.
tightrope you are about to walk.
Well, it's not a tightrope. It was not a tightrope. It's just factual reporting. This is what Chin was very toxic to people on the forums, and he essentially did not agree with one of the Chinese commentators' views on his team, and he called her dumb. And that's that. That's it. There's no tightrope to walk. I'm just telling you what happened. I'm just telling you what my eyes have seen, processed through my brain. So, yeah, Chin apparently kind of toxic. That's really all there is to it. But not a tightrope. Very wide rope.
Very wide rope.
Loose rope.
Loose rope. Loose wide roping.
Very loose, wide roping.
That is not a sport I would care to watch.
That is my favorite ride at the Schlitterbahn. If you go to that water park, is loose, wide roping. I mean, being a dick sometimes happens. It does sometimes happen, but not when you're a professional head coach and bunch of other like, you know, he called and asked for like apology from the commentator, and the commentator was like, "Sure, I'll apologize." He was like, "Actually, no," and he just never heard the apology. You know, it's like it's a history of probably not unprofessional behavior in relation to online because being a professional is you have to have a professional appearance and demeanor even online because the world is online, especially if you're in esports.
Technically, isn't the meaning of professional just mean you get paid for your work?
I guess that's technically. We're talking from I don't know. What does the dictionary say?
Define
what professional means.
Professional.
No more Wheel of Chengdu. No, the Wheel of Chengdu was retired anyways, but now it is officially. Chin itself is retired. The chin face is retired and gone.
Now it's just a wheel. It's a round.
See, Solomon says, but then Avast would be a professional, and that's not true.
I mean, by the literal definition.
So either way, Chin's gone.
Wouldn't that make you also a professional SpongeBob?
Yeah,
player?
It would. But here, I'll read a response if you want to go first. So Steakman says, for shrug in response to, does Chin matter leaving Chengdu? Great. Really good response, guys. Really good. Great stuff. Grilled Cheese says, it may matter a bit, but honestly, if he prefers being broadcast talent, I think it's what ultimately matters. Mm-hmm. Fair. So very non-committal. Do you have an answer that's not non-committal like my Discord?
No, I don't think I did.
You don't think you do?
I did not. I just had more comments about you being...
Oh, actually, Heleno's here to save the day. Oh, wait, more comments about what? Me being smart?
Oh, no.
Not being smart?
Nope.
Well, I don't hear
It said Avast is the Bill Simmons of the Overwatch community, both in looks, takes, and potential.
If I knew enough about who Bill Simmons was, this would hurt. It would either hurt me or
I don't know him either, but I feel like you should be offended.
This is the problem by dropping this at me. This is the problem. Heleno says Chengdu Hunters will still be a bottom 3 team in APAC, even if you change their coaching staff, as long as their main tanks and second DPS continue to be inflexible. That's actually a well thought out answer.
Is it?
I think it's a well thought out answer because Ray is coming back, obviously, to replace Chin.
Yes, he is.
I mean, if they get a main tank and they get some more flexible DPS, then I don't necessarily think that's... So I honestly tend to agree with that comment. Legitimately, like, you can have the best coach in the world, but if your hero pools just don't match up to what's right, you're really never going to be that great. Like, you can be better than what you're currently at, but you're never going to be able to win, like win-win, if you don't have the right hero pools set up for you. So I actually really agree with that comment.
And I did see some comments in chat as the Rocket League viewers are starting to trickle in. Don't worry, you will be having your Rocket League content in about 30 minutes here, and we'll be finishing up.
Yeah,
our
we're
episode.
almost done.
We're almost done.
Before they kick us out, put us on the streets, beat us up a bit.
I'll go back to my cardboard box.
Who's casting the Rocket League stuff? Stacks. They call him Stacks because he takes stacks of my money. He shows up and he beats me up a bit, and he's like, hey, give me the wallet. Takes his account.
Jorby and Stacks. Yeah.
Takes my stacks.
And they're also going to be kicking us out of our home on Thursday as well. So there's no Thursday episode.
No Thursday.
But next Tuesday we'll be doing
2 episodes.
The next deep dive.
And we're doing 2 episodes next Thursday.
2 episodes.
There's 2 episodes next week because
double header
heading into
all
the grand
across
finals.
The sky.
So finally back to our normal schedule next week.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It is next week, right? Yes. So that's good. And then there was one final question we have to respond to, which was that we asked, which is where should Chin go on the laptop or Jayne's bald head? And now Chin is going to the trash, sadly. So Chin is gone. Goodbye, Chin.
My head is safe for another day.
Your head is safe. So that leaves now what are we going to ask this week? And my guess, so something that was fun that happened was that there's been a streak of cosplaying in the Overwatch community. If you'd like to bring this up, Mike. There's been a streak of cosplaying. As you can see here, this is the wall of tank cosplayers. Various cuteness levels. And I think the question should be, who did it best? Who did it best?
Obviously, Gushway.
Then Gushway did it best?
Gushway did it best. Although, McGravy sent it to Halsey, right? Or Halsey. Artist.
Halsey.
I got it right.
Halsey, yes, that's right. The youth do like when they
Things
do the
be mad wild and
when the flappers and they're they're dancing.
Yep.
Remember the flappers from Great Depression?
I mean, McGravy gets extra bonus points for getting a response and a tweet from Halsey.
That's true. He wished Halsey a happy birthday today on Twitter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I respect the moves. I respect the hustle.
It's nice to see our 200 IQ brethren who has $1 million in the bank and drives a Lambo.
Their IQ also loops through the floor back to the ceiling.
Loops through the ceiling back through the floor?
No, floor to ceiling. It's all one big plane. So our question is, who did it better? Rank the tank cosplayers and see whose was the most. Who was the most gotchi-gasm for you? What made you lose? Okay, what made you unable to win?
And
That's our question because I think it's very important actually because it's a hotly debated topic, and that's really all there is to it. I'd say
that's all we got.
Anything else you want to put? No. So you have Gooshway. I'm actually gonna put. I actually put Fissure at number 1, if you'd believe it. I loved Fissures because it was so out of nowhere and there was no precedent before it. That Fissures was the best cosplay. But give us your answers below in the YouTube comment section in the Envytv, podcast reviews if you ever want to do that. In my Discord, also in the contested Mailbag subreddit or on the Compo W thread that comes up there. I'm Avast. That has been Jayne. And that has been Contested.
See you next week.